In the year 9 AD, three of Rome's most elite legions, over 20,000 heavily armed, undefeated soldiers, marched into the dark, uncharted depths of the Teutoburg Forest. They represented the unstoppable might of the world's greatest empire. Yet, days later, not a single man walked out alive. For centuries, historians have wondered, how did a chaotic alliance of Germanic tribes annihilate the invincible war machine of Rome in just 72 hours? The answer lies not in weapons or numbers, but in a chilling betrayal that the Roman Emperor Augustus refused to believe until it was too late. And the most terrifying part of this massacre was a secret trap hidden deep within the trees, which we will uncover at the very end of this story. To understand this disaster, we must look at the man Rome trusted blindly, Arminius. Born a Germanic prince, he was taken by Rome as a child, trained in their brutal military tactics, and raised to be a loyal Roman commander. Emperor Augustus viewed him as a son of the empire, but Arminius never forgot his bloodline. While leading Roman troops under the command of General Varus, Arminius was secretly organizing a massive, silent coalition of tribes that had hated each other for generations. He used his deep knowledge of Roman warfare to guide General Varus directly into a geographic nightmare. The Romans were built for open battlefields. Arminius knew that, and that is why he led them into a place where their heavy shields and long spears would become their own graves. To truly grasp how 20,000 men walked straight into their doom, we must examine the absolute blindness of the Roman commander, Publius Quinctilius Varus. Varus was not a seasoned military general. He was a politician, a tax collector who had ruthlessly ruled over Syria and Judea. Emperor Augustus sent him to the Germanic frontier not to fight, but to civilize and tax what Rome considered a wild, subhuman population. Varus treated the fierce Germanic tribesmen as if they were already conquered subjects. He completely ignored the shifting winds of rebellion. On the fateful autumn of 9 AD, as Varus prepared to move his three elite legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, back to their winter quarters near the Rhine, Arminius approached him with a calculated lie. Arminius reported a minor uprising deep in the north, a rebellion that he claimed could be easily crushed with a small detour. Loyal Roman officers, including a rival Germanic chieftain named Segestes, begged Varus not to trust Arminius. Segestes explicitly told Varus that a trap was being set, that Arminius was a traitor. But Varus, blinded by his own supreme arrogance and his absolute belief in Roman superiority, dismissed the warnings as mere personal jealousy. He ordered the massive column to change its course, turning away from the safe military roads and marching directly into the uncharted wilderness. The decision to leave the established trails was the exact moment the Roman Empire signed its own death warrant. A Roman legion on the march was not just a fighting force. It was a massive, slow-moving city on the move. The three legions were accompanied by thousands of camp followers, women, children, servants, and hundreds of heavy wagons loaded with supplies, gold, and luxury goods. The line of march stretched for over 3 to 4 miles long, winding thin and vulnerable through the dense, oppressive ancient woods. Almost immediately, the terrain became a nightmare. The sky turned dark, and a violent autumn storm unleashed a torrential downpour. The ground transformed into a thick, sucking mud that trapped the heavy wagons and caused the horses to panic. The proud Roman soldiers, weighed down by nearly 80 pounds of iron armor, heavy wooden shields, and wet woolen cloaks, found themselves struggling just to take a step forward. To make matters worse, Arminius and his scouts quietly vanished into the trees under the pretense of gathering allied reinforcements. Varus was left completely alone in a geographic trap, surrounded by an invisible enemy, with a column of soldiers that was now hopelessly fragmented, exhausted, and losing order before a single sword had even been drawn. As the storm raged on and the Roman lines stretched dangerously thin, the silence of the forest was suddenly shattered by a terrifying sound. A chorus of thousands of barbaric war horns echoed through the trees, followed by a deadly rain of heavy wooden javelins pouring from the dense canopy. Arminius's trap had sprung. The Germanic warriors did not charge into an open, traditional battle. They utilized terrifying guerrilla tactics. They utilized the terrain perfectly, striking from the high ground of the forested hills and then melting back into the shadows before the Romans could form their legendary defensive walls. The Roman soldiers were trained to fight in tight, disciplined formations, creating an unbreakable wall of shields that pushed forward like a tank. But in the narrow, muddy paths of the Teutoburg Forest, there was no room to form a line. Soldiers were cut off in small groups, fighting for their lives against an enemy that knew every tree, every swamp, and every hidden trail. The screaming of the wounded, the crashing of falling trees in the storm, and the constant, unseen attacks drove the auxiliary troops into a frenzy of panic. Varus tried to restore order, commanding his men to build a fortified night camp, a standard Roman military procedure. They managed to survive the first night, but the dawn brought no relief. The storm grew even worse, and the Romans realized they were completely cut off from civilization, miles away from any fort, with their supplies ruining in the mud and their numbers dwindling by the hour. By the morning of the second day, the proud Roman war machine was reduced to a desperate line of ghosts. General Varus ordered his men to burn their heavy supply wagons and abandon all non-essential equipment. The gold, the luxury goods, and the massive tents were left behind in the mud. The only goal now was survival. They attempted to break out of the forest into the open country to the north, but Arminius had anticipated every move. As the columns tried to cross an open field, they found themselves blocked by massive earth walls and wooden barricades that the Germanic tribes had spent weeks building in secret. Every time the Romans tried to regroup, a new wave of fresh, screaming tribal warriors emerged from the tree line. The storm never stopped. The continuous rain soaked the Romans' heavy wooden shields, making them waterlogged and so heavy they could barely be lifted. The bowstrings of the Roman archers became loose and useless in the damp air. The invincible legions were being systematically dismantled, piece by piece, by an enemy that refused to stand and fight a fair battle. By the third day, the discipline that had conquered the known world completely shattered. As the sun set on the third day of continuous slaughter, the Roman cavalry, the elite horsemen led by Emperor Augustus, made a desperate decision. In an act of pure panic and betrayal, they abandoned the foot soldiers, galloping away through the mud in a selfish attempt to reach the safety of the Rhine River. But the forest swallowed them too. Arminius's hidden cavalry scouts hunted them down in the swamps, dragging the Roman officers from their horses one by one. Seeing his cavalry flee and realizing that all hope was lost, General Varus faced the ultimate choice of a Roman commander. He refused to be captured alive, knowing the horrific tortures that awaited him. Drawing his own ornate gladius, Varus threw himself onto his sword, committing suicide in the blood-stained mud of the forest. Following his example, many of his high-ranking officers took their own lives as well. Left leaderless, terrified, and surrounded by thousands of victorious Germanic tribesmen, the remaining Roman soldiers dropped their weapons and surrendered. It was the absolute, unconditional surrender of 3 elite legions of the Roman Empire. This brings us to the terrifying secret trap hidden within the trees that we promised to reveal, the dark aftermath that Rome tried to erase from history. When the battle ended, the slaughter did not stop. Arminius and his men did not just want to defeat Rome. They wanted to send a message that would echo through eternity. The Germanic tribes transformed the Teutoburg Forest into a massive, open-air temple of horror. Roman tribunes and centurions were dragged to sacred altars deep within the woods. where they were ritually sacrificed to the old gods of the forest. Roman soldiers were hung from the branches of the very trees they had feared. For years afterward, the bones of 20,000 men were left unburied, bleaching in the dark woods, a warning to anyone who dared to cross the Rhine. Human skulls were nailed to the trunks of the trees, lining the very paths that Varus had arrogantly chosen to march down. When the news finally reached Rome, the empire fell into absolute chaos. Emperor Augustus, the man who had brought peace and stability to the Roman world, was completely broken by the disaster. Historians record that for months, Augustus refused to cut his hair or shave his beard. He would wander through the halls of his massive palace in total darkness, banging his head against the marble walls and screaming into the night. Quintili Ver, legions red. Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions. Rome never attempted to conquer Germany again. The Rhine became the permanent, bloody border of the empire. The invincible war machine had been permanently scarred by a ghost in the woods, all because one man trusted a traitor and ignored the warnings hidden within the shadows of the past.